These tabletop scenarios are an excellent way to practice your wilderness first aid knowledge in correctly identifying and treating illnesses and injuries. If you are a School of First Aid graduate, then you are already familiar with the algorithms that are used throughout the course. These algorithms replace hundreds of pages of textbook reading and increase your knowledge retention, allowing you to easily review what you've learned. Now, in this scenario, we will be using the algorithms found in Wilderness First Aid Made Easy. And if you are not a School of First Aid student or graduate, you can purchase a copy on Amazon in the link found in the video description. And if you are registered for the online Wilderness First Aid course, you'll receive a free paperback copy of the book in the mail, plus links to the online and app versions for Apple and Android devices. Now, before we start today's scenario, please download and print a SOAP note using the link in the description below. You can fill out the SOAP note while you follow along so you can get some practice and keep track of the patient assessment. In this Wilderness First Aid tabletop scenario, the time is 2:00 p.m. The weather conditions are gray overcast, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 50% humidity. And you are hiking on a multi-use trail in a state park when a person on a mountain bike not wearing a helmet passes you, slips on the gravel, falls off her bike and hits her head on a tree. She is now laying on the ground flat on her back, and you are about a half-mile from the trailhead. The scene is safe. You size up the scene looking for traumatic bleeding and you see none. You introduce yourself and the patient provides consent. However, she assures you she feels just fine and really just wants to get back on her bike and shake it off. You instruct her to remain still because you are concerned about her spine. She agrees to stay still. You place reminders on her head to keep her head still, and the patient tells you that her name is Jane and she's 24 years old. You go ahead to perform a full primary assessment. And in the primary assessment, you find the patient has a contusion, has a bruise to her right forehead, and you find no other deformities or disabilities. So you move on to the secondary assessment, and you start with sample history. Now be sure to write what you learned in sample history on the SOAP note you downloaded and printed. Now for signs, we have a bruise to the patient's right forehead, and the patient is squinting as she is staring into the sky, and the sky is overcast. The patient states that she did not lose consciousness, and the patient is complaining of a headache, 8 out of 10 pain. And the patient complains that on this overcast day, it really is bright outside. For allergies, she has seasonal allergies, and for medications, she says she takes Allegra for seasonal allergies, but she didn't take any today because she didn't need it. Her past medical history includes a broken right wrist 2 years ago from mountain biking. And for last ins and last outs for food, she ate a peanut butter sandwich that she made at home and brought with her at 12 noon about 2 hours ago. And for liquid, she's been drinking water all day from her Camelback, and that water came from her tap at home. Now for out, she said that she peed at 12 noon, and it was clear. And for poop, she pooped at 6 a.m. this morning when she got up, and it was normal. In events leading up to the crisis, well, she said she was mountain biking on the trail. She lost traction on the gravel, and she hit her head on her way down on a tree. And she states that she did not lose consciousness, and you were right there on the scene when the accident occurred, and you know for a fact that she did not lose consciousness. Now, in the secondary assessment, let's go ahead and let's take some vital signs. And once again, be sure to write down these vital signs on the SOAP note that you downloaded and printed. The time is 2:10 p.m. Her level of consciousness is A plus O times 3. So she knows her name, she knows where she's at, and she knows the time of the day. Her heart rate right now is 78, respiratory rate 16, and you check her skin, and her skin is pale, cool, and moist. You go ahead to perform a secondary physical exam. And in that physical exam, once again, we have the bruise on the right forehead, and it's swollen and discolored and it's warm to the touch. You don't see any other signs of a traumatic brain injury. You don't see bruising around the eyes. You don't see bruising behind the ears, or you don't see any liquid oozing out of the patient's eyes, ears, or the nose. And during the secondary physical exam, you find no other signs of injuries, fractured bones, or reduced circulation, sensation, and movement. So it's been about 10 minutes, so you take a second set of vitals. And this time, the time is 2:20 p.m. Level of consciousness, once again, A plus O times 3. Heart rate is 80, respiratory rate 18, and the patient's skin is pale, cool, and moist. You notice now that the patient is now keeping her eyes shut. She is complaining of a headache, 6 out of 10, and with her eyes closed, and when she opens her eyes, she said the pain goes to 10 out of 10. Now pause the video, take a few minutes to complete your SOAP note, and plan what you'll do next. What do you believe is wrong with the patient? Now, Wilderness First Aid Made Easy will help you to eliminate the guesswork in identifying and treating injuries and illnesses. And any time that we have a patient that we know or suspect may have hit their head, let's go to page 20 in Wilderness First Aid Made Easy, brain injuries. And so in this case, we have a patient that has suffered a blow to their head but did not lose consciousness. We do not see any signs of head trauma. And when I say head trauma, I mean a traumatic brain injury, such as bruising around the eyes, behind the ears, or liquid coming from their ears, from their eyes, or their nose. But we do have a patient that has this contusion on their head. And the patient's level of consciousness has remained at A plus O times 3. But however, as we look through the list of signs and symptoms on page 20 here, we do find our patient is presenting with new sensitivities, headache, and a sensitivity to light, so sensitive that the patient is squinting and closing their eyes on a gray, overcast day. Now, this patient requires immediate transportation to medical care. You check your cell phone and you have a good signal. There are several other bystanders who have stopped, and you've asked them to stick around just in case you need their assistance. You run a spine clearing checklist found on page 13, and you will not be able to clear the patient's spine because the patient has distracting injuries, in this case a headache that is 10 out of 10 with the patient's eyes open. So this means that you'll need to backboard the patient for transportation to medical care. And so you check your cell phone again, you still have 2 bars of cell phone signal. So what would you do? Pause the video while you think about a rescue plan. So you call 911 and the dispatcher answers. You explain to the dispatcher that you're certified in Wilderness First Aid and you have a female who fell off her bike and hit her head on a tree. She has a contusion on her forehead and has signs and symptoms of a possible brain injury. She is stable but requires immediate evacuation to medical care and will require a backboard. You provide the dispatcher with your location in the state park. The dispatcher instructs you to stand by while she contacts EMS. Now, while working with the dispatcher, keep the patient calm and warm. Continue to take and record vital signs every 5 minutes and record these on the SOAP note so that medical professionals can see how the vital signs are trending. This will help them provide appropriate care to the patient. The dispatcher informs you that first responders are on their way to the trailhead, and she has contacted a park ranger who is on the way to your location with an ATV and a backboard. The ranger arrives in 10 minutes and you lead the bystanders in lifting and moving the patient to the ATV for transport to the trailhead using the backboard. You ride with the patient and the ranger to the trailhead where you hand off the patient and the SOAP note to first responders. You can view my completed SOAP note for this scenario and compare it to yours Just click on the link in the video description and you'll see my soap note. If you have questions, please feel free to leave a comment. And if you want to earn your WUFA certificate or certification, click on the School of First Aid link in the video description below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when I post the next tabletop scenario. Be safe out there.